Luis Elizondo is at the center of another controversy. And in today's video, we're going to be jumping in on that. Because the controversy is, did Luis Elizondo run a program called ATIP, right? Or AAWSAP? And in today's video, we're going to look at what is ATIP and what is AAWSAP and some of the comments from the community about this, because Eric Davis just posted on Facebook some quite controversial comments about Luis Elizondo and his involvement with this Pentagon-run UFO program. So let's jump in, y'all. Now, before we begin, let's explain what ATIP and AAWSAP is. ATIP is the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. AAWSAP is Advanced Aerospace Weapons Systems Applications Program. There we go. Now that we have that figured out, now we can move forward when, those are mentioned. Let's go over everyone's different comments about Lou Elizondo and his connection to both of these programs. Let's start with Eric Davis. Lou never worked for the ATIP, nickname. AAWSAP, actual name. He was also not in a support role to the DIA program manager, James Lacatski. Jay Stratton did provide support to Lacatski, while Lou provided some support to the UAPTF when Jay was its director. Then Eric Davis is asked, so is he lying or just embellishing? Eric Davis, embellishing. I will be talking to Lou next week to clear up what role he had post-AAWSAP and pre-UAPTF and during the UAPTF. Lacatski was the DIA program manager for the AAWSAP, whose nickname was ATIP. Lou confirmed to me that he was not involved. Lou apparently had his own ATIP, but has to clarify to me next week what that program was doing and how he came to call it ATIP. And no, my Facebook profile, timeline, and feed have not been hacked. Become informed by reading Lou's new book, in which my name appears many times. Become informed by reading Skinwalkers at the Pentagon by Kelleher and Knapp, in which my name appears several times. Then become informed by reading Jay Stratton's forthcoming book. I'm not sure how many times he mentions me because I haven't asked him. And separately, take note of the letter that Senator Reid once wrote wherein he named Lou in the context of the ATIP. Then report back to all of us in this Facebook group on whether you can keep the opposing claims made about Lou's role in ATIP by these books straight, because he addressed it in his new book. Harry Reid addressed it in his letter, and Jay Stratton addresses it to set the record straight in his forthcoming book. I've forgotten whether Kelleher and Knapp's book even mentioned Lou and what he did at the OUSDI. I had no interactions with Lou during the AAWSAP ATIP. OUSDI is a policy office, not an intelligence agency. Therefore, Lou's role with UAPs is murky, only because he was, back then, a counterintelligence and security official, and I really have no idea what role the UAP topic had in his portfolio, even though Hal Putoff and I communicated with him after the AAWSAP and before the UAPTF. Estimation after Lou resigned from his job in late 2017. The good news is that Lou and I will be having a conversation about my confusion next week, so he can give me more info that he says I'm not aware of, per his version of the ATIP at OUSDI. One more note. Travis Taylor told viewers in an episode, he didn't say which season and episode number that he was referring to, of Ancient Aliens on the History Channel, that Lou didn't run any ATIP follow-on to the AAWSAP, which is what Jay Stratton is going to say in his book. This doesn't make Lou a liar. This means that there's a fundamental misunderstanding and a fundamental disagreement over whether Lou ran a follow-on ATIP. The real liars and frauds, grifters, felons, loons are Dan Burish, Bob Lazar, Ed Fausch, Richard Boylan, Dr. Stephen Greer, Rao, Tim Cooper, etc. And remember this bit of Eric Davis talking with Stephen Greenstreet? This is what he said about Lou back then.
When they came out and said that Luis Elizondo had nothing to do with ATIP whatsoever, the Pentagon said this.
That was a horrible, wrong piece of public relations. That was absolutely incorrect. They did not know what they were talking about. My boss went to report to Lou at the Pentagon in the OUSDI offices during the ATIP era. So that's right. You know who my boss is, Hal Puthoff, right? Dr. Hal Puthoff.
Now, of course, Eric Davis is saying all kinds of things, right? He's a little bit all over the place with this, if I'm being honest. I don't know what to make of it. So let me know in the comments what you think. Now, let's move to what John Greenewald Jr. has said about this from the Black Vault. I have zero idea what to make of this and won't use it in my personal research for squat. I've personally seen Dr. Eric Davis relay factually wrong and provably false information to Facebook groups about declassification processes and FOIA firsthand. That said, I find it hilarious that the same people who have long trashed Davis for various reasons are now rolling this out as irrefutable proof of something because it confirms their doubts about Luis Elizondo. For me, it does nothing. But again, it's hilarious to see what it does for others. In other words, tread carefully with what everyone says. Something ain't right. He has been looking into this, and I'm going to put a link in the description to a live stream he did really diving deep about all of this and all of his FOIA connections and documents. It's a whole nother level to this. So please check that out. And here's a short clip from that stream.
Anyway, that's the AWSAP ATIP thing. Going back to ATIP, to Luis Elizondo, this was different. This was something that operated out of OUSDI. This was separate from the original AWSAP contract. This was something that he wanted to pass to Neil Tipton. And again, this memo would essentially make Tipton's desk the central point for all things UAP and UFO related. That is, if I think it was Patrick Shanahan, then DepSecDef at the time would issue that memo. There's no evidence that the memo was issued, obviously, or we'd be having a different conversation at this point.
Now, let's move to James Lacatski. What has Lacatski said about all of this? In response, Lacatski told News Nation, I was the sole program manager for the complete duration of DIA's AWSAP, September 2008 to December 2010, and worked alongside DHS in the follow-on Kona Blue program through 2011. Luis Elizondo was not involved in either AWSAP or Kona Blue. But what's unusual is Lacatski has said other things in the past, especially on the Weaponized podcast.
That's where the name ATIP came from. ATIP was something that was necessary to be proceeded with on military cases. Lou handled that. I was not privy because it was mainly spun up as I was getting ready to retire. I will say this, though, that when I left, all of our references.
So we've heard from Eric Davis, John Greenewald Jr., James Lacatski. Now let's hear from Jeremy Corbell. What does he have to say about this? I've been reading a bunch of the conversations here on X, and I'm pumped for tonight's Coast to Coast AM show with George Knapp interviewing Luis Elizondo at 10 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I suspect much of the misunderstandings and statements online that appear to be conflicting regarding AWSAP ATIP are more about semantics than anything else. The details on how things were done and when and who was led on what, etc. It's really not all that complicated, and it will be great to help clarify that so we can move towards the more valuable UAP dialogue. I kind of agree with Jeremy here, if I'm being honest. You know, the bigger question in all of this, does any of this matter? Now let's hear from the man himself, Luis Elizondo, and here he is with George Knapp on Coast to Coast.
Here's one I think could be constructive. And as recently as today, this is floating around all over the place. You and I have exchanged some information about it. Dr. James Lacatski answered an email. Some news organization asked him for a photo, and along the way they said something about AWSAP that he corrected, that it seemed like the questioner got it wrong, and he just corrected him, but he didn't want to give a comment. They used his comments anyway, and it sounds like he's coming after you. I'm telling you, he was not coming after you. He was not. He was just pointing out you weren't really a big part of AWSAP. You were invited to be part of it, and if it had survived, you would have been part of it. But he was just clarifying that, and it sounds
Correct.
like he's
no, I
attacking.
was not part of AWSAP. I made it very clear in my book. In fact,
Right.
Jim was, Jim was one of the founders and creators of that. The guy deserves enormous credit for that. He really does. There would not be an ATIP had there not been Jim Lacatski or an AAWSAP. And I don't take anything personally. I know Jim very well. He's a highly intelligent man. I don't know the nuances of what happened, but like I said, man, it's. I don't pay attention to the drama, anyways. Jim's a great guy. I'm sure if he had a problem, he'd probably let me know. So just like I would him.
Let's talk ATIP versus AAWSAP. So the New York Times story was very important, but it got a couple things wrong. The $22 million that was supposedly went to ATIP was AAWSAP money, and there's a lot of blurring of the lines, in part because some of the people who worked for AAWSAP, that contractor effort under DIA, also helped you in what became ATIP later. A lot of confusion there, including even just as recently as today, about who did what and what happened, and whether or not there's all this competition between the guys who had different jobs, you, Jim Lacatski, Jay Stratton. Can you sort of help us sort of separate wheat from chaff on all that confusion?
George, these guys are all great guys. Jim Lacatski is again, he's a national hero. What he was able to do was incredible. And Jay Stratton too was able to do. I mean, he became the first UAP task force director. So these men have done great things for their countries, and both AAWSAP and ATIP owe their existence to them. But there are, it is a blurry line, because elements of AAWSAP later transformed into ATIP, the formal program that was run not out of DIA, but out of the Pentagon, where I was at. And there's where things get blurry, because not everybody in AAWSAP was part of that formalized effort later on. And so it's understandable to me that there's some confusion. Look, the reality here is we're all working towards the same thing, man. It's all about disclosure, right? And put egos aside and all that nonsense, because at the end of the day, we're one team, one fight. And it's about getting the job done, getting Congress informed, getting the American people the information they deserve, right? And getting the government to work as it's supposed to work. I don't like to get into the trenches of the he said, she said. It's silly. I don't think it's constructive. And at the end of the day, everybody deserves credit. Everybody has done a tremendous job. The folks at AAWSAP, the scientists there and the folks over with Bigelow, they did an incredible job. Bigelow paid for a lot of this stuff himself. People don't know that. I mean, this guy's a patriot. I mean, he spent his own money fronting a lot of the bill for the government's efforts. There's a lot of good people. Colin Kelleher, Jacques Vallée. I mean, all these folks did incredible work for the government. So, I don't like to get into the he said, she said, because I'm not sure it's necessarily constructive.
Well, here's the thing.
I want to give a huge shout out to Red Panda Koala. Put links in the description. Please go check it out. He provided the videos there that had all the text over it and everything. That was him. So thank you to him. Shout out to him. Thank you. And as well, let's look at some other documents that are out there that may help support Luis Elizondo, because I found this one from Vinnie Adams to be quite interesting. Apparently, Luis Elizondo is listed as an agent on this bigot list, right, for AAWSAP. So, I mean, to be honest with you, y'all, at the end of the day, I don't know what to make of it. Because when you look at what AAWSAP is, it's just a program, right? AAWSAP was started as a contract, right? Anybody could bid on it. AAWSAP was put forth as this program to study technological stuff, right? And I'll put links in the description. You can look at these documents right here that I'm showing on the screen, right? So I don't know, right? Anybody could have bid on it. And if you look at the Wikipedia for ATIP, you see that it was started in 2007, which doesn't make any sense because AAWSAP wasn't even started till 2008, right? So I look, I don't know, and do these details matter? But there is a lot of discrepancies here between the names. You got Eric Davis saying it's Lou Elizondo started a new ATIP, another ATIP. He's got his own ATIP. I don't know. They all make conflicting statements. Is this all part of the plan? Is this just to mess with us? I don't know. You know, we're focusing on this. Are we missing the ball somewhere else? Is this a magic trick? Is there something else going on while we're focusing on this? I don't know. Should we be focusing on this? I thought it was important because everyone's talking about it, right? And I want to ask you, do you think we should focus on this? So look, seen everything that I showed you today. There's a lot out there. Please go check out that John Greenewald Jr. live stream. Well worth the watch. So without further ado, again, I said it again. I don't know why I say that every time. We're ending. The video's over. Okay? Okay, y'all. Thank y'all so much for watching. We'll see you guys on tomorrow's video. Remember, every day's a gift, y'all. Peace!
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me